Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Canyon. Welcome back to another installment in the Quickview series. Welcome back to another installment in a whole lot of things. It's a Quickview series where we take an item and or object relevant to tiny toy cars that go slow. Today being the ProLine Toyo Open Country RT PRO10211. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run it through a thing we call the tire test protocol. We're going to run through the protocol on a vehicle that tests tires of this particular size. We have a vehicle for this size, a vehicle for this size, and a vehicle for the size above that. We're going to run it on the middle one because the test size of this tire is the middle one. We're going to do a little thing here. We're going to take a punch, and we're going to punch two holes in this at the 12 o'clock and the 2 o'clock positions. I've tried 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. I'm a 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock guy. We're going to take an insert, and we're going to put it in the tire. The insert du jour is an Injora green silicone, because the included foam, I think they're expecting you to put this in something with a hard body on. I would call this medium hard, and we only call it medium hard because RC four-wheel drive exists. RC four-wheel drive will provide you with a foam rigid enough to serve as a jack stand when working on a full-size car. So it is an Injora silicone, which you'll notice is a hair too big, because you got to remember you have the lug and the carcass, so the inside of the tire is probably 5 or 6 millimeters smaller than this. Fortunately for us, the green is really soft on the outside. So what we're going to do is we're going to gather data empirically. We're going to take the vehicle that we always use onto the test protocol that we always use, and we're going to use a system that is at least tangential to science. One could mistake it for science if they squinted at a distance. We're going to obtain evidence empirically. Then what is going to happen is, historically, just under 1% of people that view the results are going to find that those results do not mesh with some aspect of their worldview. They're going to get mad about it. The degree to which they get mad about it varies from product to product. I will say ProLine, as a brand, does not appear to have a rabid fandom, as many other brands do. And I even being a nearly lifelong sports fan, follower of a specific baseball team for almost my entire life, over 80% of my life, I don't understand rabid fandoms. I'm not going to try to bonk someone on the cranium in the parking lot of a stadium because they like a different team than me. And I'm not going to go harumph, harumph, if somebody says, yo, dude, I tried those tires and they didn't work for me. I won't be like, well, then you're a dum-dum. I'll be like, okay, because I've experienced that here. Allow me to take a small segue as we refer to the compound that ProLine calls G8. G8. And here's a hot take for you. Early on, hot takes coming off the hot stove fast. G8 is, under most circumstances, just not a very good rock crawling compound. It's not. I view it as a long-wearing compound. If you operate in an area of extraordinarily high grip, these will work for you as a rock crawling tire. And you will know, I would assume, based on where you live, you will know, or if you're in a high grip, medium grip, low grip environment, G8 is fairly temperature stable, more temperature stable than most, meaning the range of temperature within which they can safely operate is fairly large. When it gets very cold, say below 30 degrees Fahrenheit or so let's say 0 degrees centigrade, the rubber will really, really firm up. But most tires are going to suffer in that realm of temperature, down around 0. You get up around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or let's say 40 degrees Celsius. If recollection is correct, they're fairly close. Many compounds get what we call greasy. They will get real greasy as whatever the exotics are, because every tire is composed of a compound. Rubber in a tire itself is a compound. Black rubber is carbon black and natural rubber, if there's no other additives. But most of these tires are as much additives as anything else, and that additive is going to react with temperature in a very specific way. Also, the relationship between what the compound is made of and the thickness of the carcass and the composition of the lugs on that carcass, their height, their spacing, the amount of void to lug, all of these things are going to contribute to how a tire performs both on the surface in question and in the weather in question. So what we do, we make some not insignificant effort, 113 millimeters, which is 4 and just a hair over 4 3/8, just a hair over 4 3/8. Almost exactly 40 millimeters wide, a hair over 40 millimeters wide. These say on the sidewall 1.5 by 4.45. I will take it. That is extremely close to both. So what we do is we make every effort possible. We run the same obstacles in the same vehicle. Now, we can't control the weather any further than the fact that I live in Southern California, so the weather itself is reasonably predictable. We hope for certain things. We have hopes and we temper those hopes because we understand realities, fortunate and unfortunate. Okay? G8 has historically never really shown as a rock crawling compound for strictly for rock crawling. Meanwhile, G8 on a vehicle that I would call mixed use, meaning some dirt, some loam, some time in the creek, going up on a rock now and again, G8 is remarkably good because it wears remarkably slowly. And most folk, if you're going to put on your mittens or whatever your summer attire is, and you're going to go out and you're going to take your vehicle with all your scale gubbins hanging on it, and you're going to go out and you're going to have a lovely time out in the woods. If you're comfortable, they're comfortable. So G8 has an extreme strength there. Regardless, this is a Crawler Canyon Quickview of a tire, and we are going to view it as a rock crawling tire. We will see it on wet. The trencher, we tested the Class 1 trencher fairly recently relative to this recording, and it did pretty well, even though we didn't take it into any mud, knowing that the trencher will be absolutely terrible on clay and mud. It's a clean, wet tire, if that makes any sense to you. It's wet out, but there's no mud, there's no goop. The Toyo is a scale tire. This exists in the real world. You can go and buy a Toyo Open Country RT, meaning that it is already starting one step down from most other tires. Because if the more hieroglyphic the tread pattern gets, the more pin-like the tread pattern gets, the easier it is for a tire to operate, because some things do not directly translate to scale, and that is a blanket statement. Because the Pitbull PBX-AT Hardcore, look at the tightness of the lug on there. These did great, and Pitbull compounds don't even do well here, so a lot of inexplicable stuff going on there. And also take into consideration tires like the Genius Frontera Sem Frontera. This is a real tire. They make these in Brazil, it's actually. It looks like that. It's that thin and that tall and that big, and it's real. So scale tires, meaning that there is a real-world equivalent, that covers a real span of things. And the performance of them covers a real span of things. One of the benchmarks for performance around here is the J-Concepts Tusk, which is helped a lot by that green dot, J-Concepts green compound, which is incredibly capable of handling temperature. They get the carcass very correct to the thickness. This is kind of the benchmark against which all other scale tires, meaning that there's a real world equivalent, are compared. Despite the fact that this is called the Tusk and not the Mickey Thompson Baja Pro XS, which is what a Tusk is. The Baja Pro XS pattern is maybe the best pattern for that translates from, imagine that this is 35 inches tall and it goes down real small and now it's this big. It is maybe the best translation. So in the back of our minds, there's constant comparison. There has to be. Any tire test is in effect a comparison. How does that tire do relative to others in terms of tires of the same compound, in tires of different compound, and on and on and on. It's an infinite list of variables. We make every effort, conditions, vehicle, course. We try to fit every test tire with what is called a Canyon Custom Soft, which is 2 wraps of fridge foam around an EVA inner, because these are great. They serve every tire pretty much equally well. Are they the absolute perfect solution to every problem? No, but they do work fairly universally. Unfortunately for us, you saw 40 millimeters wide to the outside. This is wider than, these are wider than the tire. So the tire would be real bulged out and it wouldn't want to conform. So for that, our fallback is either the glow-backed silicones, which look like these, or the Injora silicones, which look like this, but are green. Or blue, depending on the weight of the vehicle and the thickness of the carcass. These should do well. I don't think they're going to hurt the performance of the tire. The weather outside is pretty conducive to performance, and all that is left to do is hit the 10 stages of the Class 2 tire test protocol and test all of the things of the Toyo RT. We had a set of these here a number of years ago, and for whatever reason, I forgot to test them. So I'm doing it now, and I like the Toyo RT, not for a rock crawling application. I mean, we'll see. We've never run the protocol. It could surprise me, and by extent, perhaps all of us. But I like this tire because it is just right there around that 4.5 inches tall, and there's a big void in tires. They're either 419s or they're 465s, and there's almost nothing in between. And I contend that the 4.5 inch tall tire is a near perfect size tire for a portal vehicle, because portals get their ground clearance via the portal, so you actually want to run a little bit smaller of a tire, a 435 to a 445. So I have hopes. These are already destined. These are going on a vehicle. Shortly after they're dismounted from this test rims, they're going to go on other rims, and they're going to go on the vehicle that they're meant for, because knowing what I know about G8, they're going to do great in their future application. How will they do as rock crawling tires? That is for this guy and a bunch of haphazardly glued together rocks to tell us. So we are as close enough as to approximate 62, 16, 65, 62 degrees Fahrenheit and 65% relative humidity. Sun is getting up a little high. It hasn't really broken through. The rocks have been sun-free for many hours now. Will we get that translation of the magical mystery of some tires and their relationship with Injora silicones, particularly the green ones? You take a 2-2 Canyon trail and you put a green silicone in it and you're like, what? How? Why is this good? And we have seen a number of tires be elevated substantially, significantly, and noticeably by the inclusion of a silicone. We do have a tight lug. We have a tight lug. And you can watch. What will happen is we need a couple moments for that cooperation the cooperation and collaboration to take effect as the insert and the tire get to know each other a little better. And it is going to be little things. As always, the little things that kill. I watched the tire get to a certain point on any incline. And then I watched that same tire struggle because the lugs are tightly spaced enough such that do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know how subtle it's representing itself. I can't judge that. What I can judge is that in terms of other tires, see, we get right there and we watch full shuttle. We'll cut back. And now, there we go. What happens is, when we get to a point in the terrain where the terrain is broken just such, it results in the tire basically just spinning. And this is one of the C's. It is not specifically the carcass. It is not specifically the compound. It is the composition. Now, in the real world, now you take that tire, you put it into the imaginary copier, you blow it up. The gaps in between the lugs when it's full size are fairly substantial. And they will generally be driving over broken rock of roughly the same size as the ones that we are on. Again, some things don't translate to scale. So barring those weird outliers like the PBX AT Hardcore and the J Concepts Bounty Hunter, the tiny little 393 Bounty Hunter, which just has lugs on top of each other, when you get a lug this tight, you are going to suffer the issues related to a lug this tight, which is getting a 9.5 here at the beginning, because spin is never the path to a higher score. Much as noise is ultimately power lost, a tire that will sit and spin, meaning that it's requesting additional input it wants conversion input. It wants enough conversion input to convert that incline into a ramp. Because any incline struck with sufficient speed becomes a ramp. It's that, right? It is that right there. That is the differential between a tire that you go, oh, hey, and a tire where you go, oh, hey. I've yet to meet a major branded tire that is catastrophic. Even the X2 S3 compound tires from RC Four-Wheel Drive, they're still functional. I've met many a catastrophic foam. The included foams with these, we would just be spinning. Anytime we would get to a point, like usually we'll get right up here, we'll start to come across this face, we'll get right here, and then you see where that driver rear is just smushy, smashed. That other foam wouldn't do that, and it would just and we wouldn't pull over it. Can we get back? Can we get right on track? You feel me? You get up into about that like 35 to 40%. We use bump far less often in scale than it is used in the 1-1 world. And this is just what I've gathered from watching people maneuvering vehicles like this in the 1-1 world. Because the tire has an RPM range in which it is most comfortable. It wants to rotate at a certain speed. And 1-1 rock crawlers can't really do this. This is another thing that doesn't translate from scale. We can go incredibly slow. Got a little mechanical there, so we'll speed differential, get the slider through. You know, here's the thing about the Toyo. It starts a couple of rungs down on the ladder. It is a scale translation with lugs very tightly packed. It is made in G8 compound, which is not the grippiest thing you've ever seen. Do not be fooled into thinking that the silicone here is not really, really helping in allowing that tire to wrap, to get that tire out of just the round shape. There's a good amount of static bag, and when we get it on those surface irregularities, the silicone is lifting heavy. 9.5 at the first, 9.6 here. If we even begin to drill down a little, we look at the fact that we're running a silicone insert. I think the silicone insert is helping the Toyo on every conceivable level, because what is the Toyo? It's an oddball because it's 4.45 inches tall, which means it's not for the class 2 guys. It's not for the class 1 guys. It's for something quite literally in between. It is for a rig that I absolutely see fitted with silicones. The do-it-all, go-everywhere rig. The first set that was here in the canyon was fitted to an Axial 10.3 CJ7. They looked the absolute part. They looked tremendous. And for that CJ7, particularly good, because that body is an absolute meatball. It's an absolute tank, despite it's a gateway drug body is what that body is, which is, it's not a hard body. It's not made out of ABS, but good God, is it heavy. Heavier even than like full-blown Traxxas offerings like the Blazers and the Broncos and stuff, up there with the weight of a Defender. And these handled it just fine. G8 is historically a compound that, combined with the thickness of the carcass that they select for it, tends to enjoy more PSI. So typically, if you're building something that is more pure performance oriented, G8 tires are not going to deflect enough for you. You can kind of cheat the system a little bit. You can run a very soft but sidewall supporting insert like a silicone or a 3D printed. I personally cannot imagine a scenario where I would put a 3D printed insert into a Toyo Open Country RT. It's not that tire. If it's Tusk versus this, it's a tough call because they don't make a 445 Tusk. Many times I wish they would. They make a 393 and a 419, a 475 and a 525 and a 575. They make a lot of Tusks, but they do not make a 445 Tusk. Silicone's helping a lot. I'm going to stay at the 6, though. I'm going to stay at a 9.6. It's controllable throughout. ProLine has, as of this recording, recently lowered their prices, so it's $25 a pair for the Toyos. You add another $16 to that for silicones on a bad day, on a bad Amazon day, $20. So you're $70 all in, and you'll be very solid. And this type of performance can easily be replicated in different environments and on different vehicles of different weights. For me, the Toyo is niche within niche. And that's kind of the strength of it for me. Do you want a tire in a 465? How many options do you need? Do you want a tire in a 4.19? How many options do you need? How many 4.19 scale looking tires do we need? Almost all of the scale tires in 419 are representatives of real world tires. Like, there's so few. Like, Endura made a kooky little comp pin in 419, and you can get a megalithic in 419. Very, very nicely done, Toyo. This is why we have to go back and check. See that little, it goes, It goes, They drive well. And when I speak of drive in that context, I mean, what does the rotation of the tire translate itself into forward motion? They are, which is a little surprising, as we are, just lugs. There's no noticeable directionality. They drive nice. They're well-mannered. They don't get all weird and squirty. And there will be, on any tire that has a silicone employed, there'll be a little flywheel effect. There's your flywheel effect right there. Catch and release, catch and release, catch and release. And there's weight. There's weight to that silicone. A class 2 silicone is typically around 70 grams. A single stage foam, will be about 15. And a 3D printed insert of the same size will be about 30, between 30 and 40, depending on the amount of infill and whether it's a 2-stage or a single stage, what have you. So it is one of the heaviest, if not the heaviest option. And I know a lot of people are not big fans of that amount of rotating mass. I don't think 70 grams breaks the bank. I look for a specific amount. I look for a figure, 200 to 250 grams per corner, and that'd be total combo weight. So you can run a little bit lighter weight of a wheel. You can go with a wheel that has a plastic inner ring, and it's fairly easy to end up with a silicone fitted combo that weighs about the same as a combo that just has a foam in it or a 3D printed insert. So your amount of rotating mass is going to be about the same. I'm not one to chase, I want to get 80 grams total at each corner. I'm not one to chase that. I know that that's a big part of the skinny tire movement. We have to absolutely minimize every gram of rotating mass. I think we're chasing dragons at that point. By default, if you can clear this side on a go, you get a 9.7 over here. So the Toyo goes home with a 9.7 over here. And we know that our static bag is within the acceptable range because 4 3/8 tire, straight axles, we're not diff bonking everywhere we go. Oh, his squeak is back. It indeed does come and go. Because if you can run a 4.45 and not really notice any clearance issues that aren't present on a 4.65, that's a good thing. The 4.45, being an industry oddball, is a great one in my mind because I think if the rig fits a 4.19, maybe with a little trimming it'll fit a 4.45. And 5 millimeters of increased height is enormous on many of these tires. It is all the difference. I can tell the difference readily between a 4.65 and a 4.75. And more often than not, what we see is that we don't need that extra 5 millimeters between a 4.65 and a 4.75. Actually, it's even less than that there. But more often than not, we're looking for an insert or a setup that will bag that 4.75 down enough that at the end of the day, it's running like a 4.65, 4.60, 4.55. Because I think a lot of the tires are too tall. And then I think they fit tires that are too short to tires that need rigs that need tires that are bigger. The 5.25 has every bit as much of a place as the 4.5, 4.45. And we honestly, there's a big resurgence now in 5.25s. And we need a resurgence in 4.45s, honestly. These are responding appropriately well to low levels of throttle. I've not seen anything from the Toyo that made me go, ugh. Boy, I wish I hadn't bought these. Because my whole time, in my mind, I'm thinking of their application. Do you have a 10.3 CJ7? Do you have a Yikon 4107 Nissan Patrol? A hideous FMS Canyon. Any of the Camel trophies. You can run these. Like, suited. Your mud results may vary. Absolutely. They're very tightly packed. I could see a lot of glazed donuttery in the future. So what I do is I start off by making an ass out of you and me by assuming that no one is taking certain tires and asking them to do that which that tire is not particularly well suited. If you're starting off on a scale tire, you bought a Toyo Open Country RT for a reason, or you're buying one for a reason. And part of that reason has to acknowledge compromise. It's a stock tire. And it's the thing. Here's the thing about the Open Country RT. It is more than good enough that if any RTR vehicle was fitted with these, and you'll find out shortly why they're not, you wouldn't have to buy replacement tires for it. The number of OE tires out there that don't need to be immediately replaced, you can certainly count on one hand. In pure rock crawling terms, you can count on one finger. That's the Canyon Trail. The threat being made to it is the Trepador, the OE, the Trepador OE from the Coyote, which doesn't fit the Coyote, you know. If the Coyote had come on these, completely different story. They'd look cartoonishly small, I think, but would be in a very different story. I don't know if anybody's out there running a tucked body with Open Countries, please do let me know. I have a mental image of it, and it's kind of hilarious. So you can get quite a bit of energy return out of a silicone. It's kind of what they do. They're veined. They're like springy 3D printed. So what I'm looking at is how much gusto do we need? What is the bean level? And that's absolutely pretty solid. Now, in terms of bumpability, like high input bump, they're gonna get a little wild. They're not asymmetrical. They're not symmetrical. They're just unilugged. You can run them in any direction. They are rotatable. And if a tire is rotatable, it's going to tend to be, if you give it a lot of beans, it's going to go wherever the rock sends it. And that's a part of the scale experience. Flywheel effect not hitting super hard here. We'll go for a catch. Look at that. Look at him. That's the slowest plop. You would need a lot of reverse throttle available, like throttle at 100% basically. They want to stay down. There we go. We'll go the other way. Yeah, they are, even with a silicone, they are a mid-level self-rider. So let me, 5, 6, 6, 7, 6, 7, 5. Could be generous and go 5. I would personally go 9.4 on the self-right. I might go 4 on the self. We'll figure it out as the scores resolve themselves. The beauty of this scenario is, regardless of what the final score is, These are going into long-term test service in fairly short order underneath an FMS FCX10 Camel Trophy D110 Defender. And I think that they are indeed the perfect size. They like the chopped up stuff pretty much. There's a little bit of the magicality of the bounty hunter, but not quite. And I think that is compound based. I think the bounty hunter in any other compound is not the tire that we know. Now, come on. Get up. Get up. The maneuverability is nice. They spin up a little slower. Again, flywheel effect. And while we're not hearing lug noise, we are definitely not enjoying moments of moments of invisible slippage. If the tire isn't hooking just in that precise moment. Surface transition on these is going to run the gamut. I think G8 is showing itself outside of maybe the bogger and the swamper and big void tires, are showing themselves to be either clean dry or clean wet. Like if it's muddy wet, you're going to want a tire with a lug that cuts through better, and you're going to want a compound that's not G8. You're going to want Durtrex C3 / Louise Super Soft. Like the Deepwoods Champ is still one of the reigning champions up there, even above the Canyon Trail in terms of a tire that doesn't care how muddy it got. Like, oh, you just drove me through a mud hole? We'll go right on the rock, and as soon as the faces of my lug clear, we're going to go. We have a scale tire that is very tightly packed, and we're going to find out how does it do in sand, how does it do in loam. We're going to find out how, over time, how it does in all the conditions. I can only speculate based on previous tires of the same orientation of lug, previous tires of the same compound. It is all compromise. What are you willing to sacrifice to get what you're getting? In the application on the FCX10 D110, this is not a sacrifice. These are taller than the factory tire, which are listed as 4.3s and are even skinnier than these. These are 445 and easily fitted with a silicone, and I think these are going to absolutely do the tricky charm, ignoring the score, because I am not now, nor would I ever fit this particular tire to what I would classify as a dedicated rock crawler. Because the word scale, if your vehicle has a shovel on it, you have more than likely made knowingly or unknowingly, you've made a compromise. You've made a compromise. You've sacrificed performance for something else. Are you all the way to Pretty Pass? Do you have a full hard body with a driver figure and a passenger and the stuff strapped to the roof rack and an overlanding tent? Do you have all that stuff? Then you are in it for one aspect and not the other. It is chasing dragons in an attempt to get maximum performance out of something that outwardly looks like a real world equivalent, because translations to scale, best performance and best appearance seldom go hand in hand. Look at a sportsman class or a super class. Look at a MOA and look what they look like. That's what performance looks like. They've sacrificed all vanity in the name of performance. And I think many of us are trying to find a happy medium, somewhere in between the two. We're trying to find something that, hey, that looks like a truck. It might not have operable door handles, and it's not full of gewgaws, but we like baseline, our gentleman here, he looks like a truck. He's got bumpers. He's got headlights and 1.5 windshield wipers. He's got rock sliders. He doesn't have a fully dropped bed. He's not made out of ABS. He looks like a truck. He's very evocative of a truck. Though that lug is packed so tight, those tires full wetted as fast as I've seen any tire full wet. They enjoy the sort of the same. They do one thing well, and they do one thing not as well. The thing they do well is, honestly, that wet performance. Clean wet feels approximately close to clean dry. It's not bad. Come across here. We'll go a little high for him. See? It's nice. I'm watching the rears slip. The rears are slipping the whole time. There's a lot of slip there. So they're certainly not better on wet than they are on dry. Yeah, absolutely. You know what that is? It is absolutely acceptable. And above and beyond all other considerations, I feel like these landed both where I expected they would and kind of where I hoped they would as well. I had to resort to the board. I had to go get the dry erase pen out and write them down because my brain was losing the plot. 95.5. We got another KLOS on the scoring. 95.5. There was a little bit of score retune and readjustment. The insert and the tire did indeed re-talk to each other. I bumped it a 10th here. I bumped it a 10th there. I didn't drop any points anywhere. 95.5 is a tie with the RC four-wheel drive Interco IROC and X2SS, the Durtrex Fossil, the Class 1 comp pin. It's right below the V1 OT6 KLRs and the Baja Claw, and below pivots and Enduro Pro comps, the full size, just misses the gravel stage by a couple tenths. I'm absolutely comfortable with the Open Country at 95.5. I think that it is very fossil-like in terms of the overall performance profile. And I think that I was a boycotter of ProLine for years and years and years. And because I'd had customer service experiences many moons ago, which were less than favorable. Nevertheless, now, in an interaction, I had asked a gentleman who works for ProLine / Horizon about the hammer and chisel tire. And he said, oh, I'll have to ask somebody over in product development because those tires predate any of the people who are currently working here. And I was like, oh. My brain, in my resistance to run ProLine, had neglected to account for turnover. And that any of the people that worked at ProLine at that time certainly don't work there now. They definitely don't work there now. And my time, I think it was after the Horizon buyout. Might have been before, might have been around the same time. Anyway, ProLine now make a better product than they did 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I will just outright say it. I still won't buy their shocks, but I will buy their bodies and their tires because the tires are now priced not just competitively, but market-wide kind of affordably, and their bodies go on sale all the time. Their full retail price on their bodies is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. Lexan body for $80 that doesn't have all the bells and whistles and trims and all that stuff. I don't know. But regardless, the Toyo Open Country RT in G8, in that nice 4 3/8 inch tall, is a 95.5, and in the right application, it could be the tire. It fits an Endura silicone just fine. If it sits at 40 millimeters wide with a silicone in it, you know, it's everything's working. These did pretty much, like, that's where I saw these landing. I was like, my thought quietly in my own head was mid 95s. Boy, did it hit it. It actually hit a 95.3. And then we had the adjustment on wet and slick rock, which took us to 95.5. So, solidly done. Good job, ProLine. Good job, us, for making it through. Thanks so much, everybody. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Come on back and see us in the next one. And in between now and then, please win it all. Do your very best. Have a good one, everybody. We will see you again here from the canyon. Baseline would love, he would give up, he's told me this, he would give up the sublime if it meant giving up the ridiculous. And he would test tires that scored between 95 and 96 all day long. It would almost kind of be like a dream, right? You can't, if everything is awesome, nothing is awesome. The problem is, so many tires are not awesome that it makes us forget that ones in the middle actually even exist. Fossils, Toyos, RC four-wheel drive Swampers. There's a lot of tires existing there in a delicious, creamy middle section. And while there might not be the perfect tire out there for everyone, there's a pretty good tire out there for everyone. And sometimes, if you can't get what you want, you take what you can get.